All right. Yes, I'm Tamara Solum, and I'm an accidental school counselor. And I've been playing my way into purpose. So, as a young girl, armed with optimism, zero direction, and a hairstyle I deeply regret, I asked my English professor father, what do I do even for a career? And he gave me a question that would haunt me for the rest of my life in the best possible way. He asked, what would you do if money or prestige didn't matter? So I ask you that. If you could have the same home, the dogs, the family, whatever is your vision of the perfect life, if you could take that money and that prestige out of the equation, what would you do? So I summed up all of my 18-year-old wisdom, and I thought for a second, and I said, I want to play. So that was not exactly the response that with the four-year plan that my parents had envisioned for me. But my answer became my quiet compass that would guide me toward every decision I made in my life. And I know you're all educators, and educators love a good acronym. They also love alliteration. So as I was thinking about my presentation, I'm like, well, let me think about my compass. What is going to be on my compass? So the first thing on my compass is to be curious and creative. And my good friend Amy is here, and she loves Dolly Parton. So Dolly Parton is part of my presentation. So what Dolly Parton would say is find out who you are and do it on purpose. Find your passion and your purpose will follow. I'm going to get verklempt, sorry. Be open to new possibilities, stay optimistic, good things will happen. Look for the situations with an open mind and many lenses, and explore, engage, and play, and create your own story. And over here, the little girl in the pink, that's me playing dress up with my big sister Mantra and my best friend Lily growing up, and Mary Beth, who I've never seen since then. And not gonna lie, I loved playing. I did dance for 12 years, I did musical theater, and my dad introduced that all to me. And so that became a part of who my passion was. So what do we know about play? Those of you who took human development learned about Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. And the important thing to know that they taught us about development and play is that through play, children explore, they experiment, they build knowledge. And what's important with Vygotsky is that their social relationships are what spur the development of creativity and problem solving and learning language and becoming, gaining growth in social and emotional awareness. And so I started thinking, well, if that's good for kids, why does play have to stop just because you're a grown-up, right? So where did my curiosity and my creativity lead me? Well, it took me to Occidental College in Los Angeles. I'm a California girl. And like I mentioned, I did theater, and I knew I could play at theater. What does theater teach us? It teaches us to use our imaginations. It teaches us to build empathy. It allows us to see a world from a million different perspectives. And being part of a cast, that's the best, because they're your family. And for that time that you're performing, you all have to work and play together to tell a story. And that story has to be meaningful and have purpose to the audience. And finally, when you're portraying a character, you're exploring whole human dimensions. You're looking at their desires and their dreams and their flaws. And more than that, you're connecting with them. And that connection is more impactful to the story that you're telling. So I graduated college with my theater degree. And then what do you do with a theater degree if you don't perform anymore other than community theater? So this is me in community theater playing Miss Hannigan with my daughter Liliana. I still do theater. but community theater, and that was me at Occidental. But I knew I wasn't going to pursue it for my livelihood. So I decided to follow in my dad's footsteps. I applied to grad school. I was going to be an English teacher like my dad. But then I thought, or wouldn't it be interesting to explore the world a little bit? Maybe have some experiences out in that is a little altruistic and meet different cultures. I've gone to Europe, but I had never gone anywhere like a developing country. So I also applied to the Peace Corps. I got my acceptance to the Peace Corps the same week I got my acceptance to UC Berkeley for graduate school in secondary English. My minor was English. What do you think I picked? Ta-da! Yes, my journey led me next to Cameroon, West Africa. And here's the second part of my compass. You see, community development ended up being my topic or my function when I went to Cameroon. And I had to be curious. I had to be confident. And community development was a way for me to work with villagers. In French, they call it an animatrice. An animatrice is someone who animates people. It makes them enthusiastic. It makes them decide to work together. And that theater experience led me into that position. I was able to work with different villages throughout my arrondissement. And my biggest project was creating a village leader seminar where all the village leaders came together. I worked with my Cameroonian counterparts, and we got funding through an international organization. So for 3 days, we had a seminar. We brought in local experts on engineering, construction, health, and sanitation. And all of these leaders got to learn from the experts in the field. I also did a secondary project, and a secondary project was a way of giving back and learning about the culture. You give from your culture, they give to you. And I decided my secondary project was going to be teaching dance at the lycée, which was the high school. And I was quite the proud mama when my girls performed at the recital Someday by Mariah Carey. Oh, one other important thing about my Peace Corps experience. I was passionate in play, I was passionate in life, but I was also passionate in love. That's my husband, Mike, he's here. And this was my daughter's Instagram from our 32nd wedding anniversary, and she loves our origin story. So what happened after the Peace Corps? Not all journeys are linear. I moved to Florida, away from my family in California. And I knew at this point I really wanted to make a difference in the life of a child. I had learned about the world, but now I was bringing it back. I pursued a career in children's mental health as a children's mental health case manager. I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And after the birth of my second daughter, I decided I wanted to be there during their formative years. Didn't want them both in daycare. So what could I do? I'm using my courage and my confidence, and I opened a home daycare. I did that until they both got into elementary school, and then I needed a job. So I looked in the paper, and there was an ad, drama teacher. And for those of you who are young, we had papers, we had to read ads in them because they didn't have Indeed or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter. We actually read papers back then, right? So I got the job as the lead teacher for Drama Kids. And Drama Kids of Sarasota had just opened, and was an international program that came from Australia. And so I was hired, I became the lead teacher, and it's an outreach program that goes into the schools and into community centers, and we provided drama instruction. So here I'm using my play, I'm using my working with kids, my confidence, my creativity, and 2 years into it, the owner says, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go sell real estate. Do you want it? You want to buy it? And I said, husband, how are we going to pay for this? We took out a loan, we bought it. We became the owners and operators of Drama Kids. We went from 80 students to 450 students in 20 years. So, yes, it was a great accomplishment. But my greatest accomplishment was my daughters, Kari and Liliana. And they supported me. My tall Lily in the middle, tiny mommy on the side. So then at about our 18-year mark, it was 2019, and something happened. You remember what happened in 2019? We got COVID. So all of a sudden I had to convert my program into an online program, and we had to do classes in spaces the size of postage stamps on Zoom. We put on performances on Zoom. We did summer camp on Zoom. We eventually got back into the schools, but we did it in the PE covered areas, and we did it outside at churches, and we found like a field somewhere to do drama kids classes, but we kept going. And I learned then that resilience really is just improvisation, just more paperwork. This brings me into Crumbolt's happenstance learning theory. For those of you who are one of my cohorts, you know that Dr. Alt taught us our career development class last summer, and she, when she taught us about Crumbolt's, I suddenly was like, oh, like a ton of bricks on my head, because it talks about how our unplanned events become opportunities. Meaningful careers are often emerge not from rigid planning, but from embracing uncertainty, following curiosity, and allowing unexpected moments to become turning points in our lives. And that just spoke to me. And as Dolly would say, I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else. So my career has been less ladder and more choose your own adventure. I did decide in 2022 to sell my business. My daughters had grown up, they had gone off to college, and I was ready for a change. So my daughter said, what, you're selling drama kids? What are you gonna do? That didn't end their life. And I said, I don't know. I knew I wasn't gonna sit on the couch eating bonbons, although I do like a good bonbon. So I wasn't sure, but I knew that play was going to have to still continue to be a part of it, even as I embraced the uncertainty. I decided to explore. I worked as a substitute. I was a contracted resource teacher in my local public school. I became an advocate, public school education advocate. I've got some of my advocates here. I became a director of educational outreach for Sarasota Rising. It was a volunteer director. But it was a great opportunity to meet local artists in our community. And my most recent, last year, I became a volunteer reporter with WSLR Radio. So I explored all these options, but I knew in my heart of my work was helping young people being able to be capable and confident and connected. So what was my next step? On my journey was to go to graduate school. And on my little compass, my needle is now pointing to building connections through caring. I emailed Dr. Topdemir, who's our advisor, and I said, I'm kind of curious about becoming a school counselor. Can you tell me more about it? And she said, well, we are having our final interviews in June 6th. It was May. And if you get all of your paperwork in, maybe we can interview and you can join us for the next semester. So I scrambled, I got recommendations, I got my transcripts, and I got it all in. I got my interview June 6th, and I was accepted to the program at the end of June. So what have I learned about building connections and caring as a school education person? Well, first off, I learned that I didn't first like being called a mature student, but then I kind of like, oh, that's kind of actually cool, because there is value in looking at things through a lens of having spent more years as an adult than as a child. I joined the Florida School Counselors Association and became an emerging leader. And I got to present at their conference at my poster. And that was back in November. And I accepted the title that my daughters have given to me, which is 20 Questions Tamara. And this is where I'm bringing in my friend Kessler over there, because I was going to say, I apologize, I asked so many questions, but actually I don't. That's just who I am. I ask so many questions in class. And Kessler one day said, you know what, Tamara, you ask a lot of questions, but sometimes you ask questions that I didn't know I needed to know. So there is that. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to mention my biggest connection now as I form my counselor identity is I am connected to the Adlerian and Rogerian theories. But I'm not going to detail because I'm going to run out of time. All right. So now at almost 60, I still get to play. Only now my stage is a school and my script is human connections. And my joy comes from helping the students find their strengths and navigate the world so that they can experience their own transformative journey. So school counseling wasn't a pivot for me. It was a destination that I'd been growing towards. So do we remember my 6 C's? Be curious and creative. Be courageous and confident. Build connections through caring. And these are just really funny comics. I had to throw those in. So growth often begins where certainty ends. And I bring in Dolly again. If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one. A closed door pushed me towards a new role. A chance conversation led to graduate school. And a lifelong love of creativity revealed a new professional calling in school counseling. My path illustrates that reinvention isn't a last resort. It's a superpower. So I have a question for you. Are you standing on the edge of indecision? Wouldn't you like to come and play? Thank you.